we've both been involved in overseas outreach work to a number of places. But it's somebody else next to me.
Oh, she went in the other room.
Ron had an opportunity to go down to Belize to do some work down there with Bob. Bob and Rhonda Farley have been down there as missionaries for over 25 years. I'm just going to look and see what the dates were, but I don't have the date. Over 25 years, though. They're independent missionaries. They're not sponsored by a specific denomination. There's a variety of different churches that support them in the work they do. There's also a lot of partnerships they have. They partner a great deal with Hope Springs Water, who's out of Athens, Texas. They go around and drill wells, resurrect wells that are damaged, or in this case of Belize, there's a lot of them that are contaminated. The British put those in when Belize was British Honduras, and they used galvanized pipe, which was a normal thing back then. Galvanized pipe obviously rusts, and the other problem with wells, especially in these kinds of countries, is the animals that wander freely everywhere cause a lot of contamination.
Well, they can get down to the aquifer?
They go down, it depends on where they are in Belize as to what level they have to go down to get good water. We've pulled wells that are 120 feet, we've pulled wells that were 48 feet. So it depends. But the water that they use a great deal, like from the rivers, is also contaminated because of the animals. Belize, in these areas, southern Belize, the Toledo district is one of the poorest areas even in Central America. The Mayan Indian tribes live in Honduras, Belize, northeastern Guatemala, and then up into the Yucatan Peninsula. That's where those tribal areas are. Most of them are agrarian. They are just subsistence farming. They make enough to live by. That's it. Many of the villages still have basic homes that have thatched roofs, no doors or windows. A lot of the villages have no power at all. It was really strange. One village we went into, just a little dirt road through it. In fact, that's where the road ended. And here's a cement block building with a satellite dish on it. And we're looking at this like, a spaceship put this here? Where did this come from? Well, what it is when the government comes in, they come in a truck and they have a generator. Whatever work they have to do, they set up the generator, run their equipment, load it all back in their truck, and then they leave. But that's only 2 or 3 times a year. So that little 8 by 10 building. But it's so out of place. It just doesn't fit there. But it's but in the agrarian existence there, a lot of the villages we go in, we see very few men. Because it's dark, but dark in the morning, they're already up and gone out to the fields. And it's dark when they're coming home. So a lot of work.
What do they raise up there for crops?
Corn is a major.
Major?
Corn. It's a lot of the you see the women who are taking the corn off the husks, and then you see them with there's these baskets, these great big baskets. They're carrying them on their heads, and there will be a central location where they're grinding it. But you see,
they have a community grinding thing, or
yeah, it's a flat wheel. I'm not sure how it works. When we went by it, they were actually grinding, and there was just like almost a fog of dust around something. I'm not going to go breathe that stuff.
Did they call that a matari? Was it like a matata?
Yeah.
But
so corn is very popular. There's other things. There's a funny squash that they grow, and they have kind of a stunted sweet potato, like it's a root type thing. It tastes different, but they're good. But they look kind of strange when you see them. But Bob and Rhonda, they've been there a long time. They have partnered with Hope Springs Water because the need for correcting all these problems with the wells and drilling new wells gives us access to the villages. Once a village realizes that we're there, it's not going to cost them anything, we're going to do something for them, they're more open to conversations with us. The village leader, the alcalde, and the school principals, I call them school principals, and they have another name for it, but the leader in the schools are the village leaders, and they're the most interested in talking to us and finding out what we're willing to do for them. He partners with LIT International. They've actually opened up 11 elementary schools in the villages.
Wow.
He has at his training center on his property, young adults come in there. The most when I was there was about 120 young adults on Friday night. They come in for Bible teaching, different types of training, teaching them different things from Scripture. And then when we go in short term, the schools actually let us come in and do the equivalent of a vacation Bible school. They just stop teaching classes. It is, come on in, take over the door. The last time there was about 350 elementary kids that we did vacation Bible schools for. There are things like this, the last time there was a new church opened and they weren't doing Sunday school for the kids because nobody knew how to run a Sunday school. So we went in and taught them how to do a Sunday school. We had 17 children and we had over 40 adults. The adults wanted to all know how to do the Sunday school. And so everybody came together in the building after services. And
how do you start on a Sunday school class? How do you start?
Well, we had a lot of materials there that we had for the Vacation Bible School. So we had materials to take with us. We had tracts, Bible tracts, like we had the Gospel of John. We had different things we could use to teach from. So we had material. We had to take all that with us. The schools in Belize are different. They hire a teacher and pay the teacher a salary. And that teacher is responsible for buying everything except for the desks and the chairs so that she can run that class. Every supply that the child needs, the teacher has to buy and provide. So that's why we did what's been a year and a half ago, I think it was. We did raising school supplies, and we raised about 6,000 pounds of school supplies.
Good.
And somebody donated a school bus, so once I got it into a good running order, 2 people from Vegas volunteered to drive it all the way down through Mexico, all the way down to Belize, and they took all the 6,000 pounds of medical supplies, school supplies with them. So it was, there's a couple pictures of Bob Farley. He's in this kind of a storage room, and he's got all these boxes stacked around him. But it's a very different type of environment like that. That they are, they do what they do in education as one person to a child. They don't have things, different materials, computers, they don't have anything to plug it into. They don't have that there. But when you go through a lot of the Mayan Indian tribes, the children get no education unless someone comes in from outside and helps set something up, trains someone. And that's some of the things that Bob and Rhonda Farley do. And that was their intent with missions. If they can go into these places and go to these villages and find interested young people that they can raise up, train, and now, most recently here, they opened a Bible college on their property. The government finally gave them approval to do a Bible college, because there is none in Belize anywhere.
So once these people are trained, educated, do they leave?
The educators come in to do the training with Bob and his wife.
The natives, the native people,
Villagers.
the villagers.
That's who we're training.
That after they're educated, though.
They turn around and go back into the village as a representative.
So they don't leave.
And Bob and his wife they're the support structure then for these people going out into the various areas. And so they actually have probably a couple hundred years ago when the Spanish missionaries, the Catholic missionaries went in, they had exposure then. And right now they have, when you talk to them about their faith, it's an intermingling of the ancient Mayan faith and Catholicism. It's kind of confusing when they explain it to you. It's this mixture of stuff. But with training these young people and raising them up in Christian faith, and they turn around and go back into the village, now they have some straightforward Christian teaching that is part of their own community. And it's been very, very successful. I mean, even to the point where Bob's relationship with the village, I mean, 11 elementary schools. I mean, I would love to have that on my resume when I die, that say, here's my legacy. I was able to open 11 schools. I mean, that is really a huge thing in an area like that. I mean, they're not huge buildings. Some of the buildings probably aren't a whole lot wider than this, maybe twice as long. And they're separated in small classrooms. But when you start with nothing, to have a building like that is really a huge thing.
Let me just interject too. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago when I went down, those schools didn't exist. So that's part, Bob and Rhonda have started this all up. And this is all the work that he's done in starting these schools up too. And it's just amazing the progress that he's made in these last 4 years. And you know, each time Mike has been down there now since then, there's been something really big that has taken place. The biggest thing now is with this, with the college that has started. I mean, that was a dream in Bob's eye when we first went down there. His biggest dream when I was there was to go into each one of these little communities of about 60 people, these little villages, and pull out one guy, maybe a 17 or 18-year-old, take him back and train him and send him back in there to spread it amongst, and that's what's happening now. Mike has seen the results of Bob's dream that he had 4 years ago. So.
It's, you see on the back, you can take one of these newsletters. It actually shows the copy of the government document where they approved the educational facility. And Bob having done that with the elementary schools, but to finally get that for Bible college, that's a huge achievement that he's been working towards. They also have a new, and there's some of those pictures, it looks like a Quonset hut that's half made. It's in there someplace. That's actually half made intentionally because it's an introduction of a new agribusiness that's teaching people the better ways to plant crops and harvest the crops, and they're doing different things. They have some people that they're experts at that kind of thing, but people, they have the village leaders come in. It's called the Association of Village Leaders, or the Village Councils, or
Council.
I can't remember.
Council.
But they meet at the Belize Training Center where Bob is cited, and they teach them a lot of these things, because often the village leader is, for lack of a better term, the head farmer in the village. He's not just a government official. He may be the leading person, but he's also a farmer like the other men that are there. So they work through these different things that they can teach them. They take them back into the villages. The last time I was there, you see crops planted in places that we didn't see anything like that before. It's a wonder that they can do that. But you see the workers out, and they have, the machetes probably are about that long. It looks like a sword. And they're working, I mean, you see these guys working through this area, taking down whatever natural vegetation it is, and then it becomes farmland. I asked myself, why the great big long things? He said, well, if we come across a snake, it's easier to get the snake with a long one than it is to get close with a short one. And I'm like, I'm all for that. I'm not a snake person, so the further I can stay from a snake, the happier I am. But fortunately, in the trip down there, I've never seen any snakes. We've seen iguanas.
They're all over the place. In fact, the villagers will send one of their young men out into the jungle to look for the iguanas, because that provides, one iguana will provide enough meat for them for maybe a whole week, for a village of 60. So you don't get very much out, but they're pretty big. We saw a couple of them along the river. Oh, they're huge.
Oh, wow.
They won't bother you, but in fact they run from you. They're more afraid of you than you are of them.
Well, if they were going to eat me, I'd be afraid.
And as far as the snakes, we never saw any snakes. And the stories that Bob tells, the snakes aren't a problem down there.
It's,
Tell them about the
there's a lot of
taper.
jungles that are there. I mean, the snakes are gonna, that's where they live. But so out where in the agricultural areas, it's unlikely that you're gonna see anything like that. That's just like, I live in Las Vegas. Well, out in the desert up there, like here, there's snakes there. I've never seen one. I've been there 25 years, I've never
Go
seen
in
a
the
snake.
casinos, you'll see.
I don't know what I would do if I did see one in my
Tell
yard.
them about the taper.
Oh, you know what a tapir is? It's a
It
pig-like
gradually
animal,
goes
they're
from-
great big, they're huge. Kind of a,
Donkey type animal.
almost like a small hippopotamus, but it has a very narrow,
Oh, okay. Snout?
but you see, where here you see like deer crossing or, and there they have caution signs that say tapir crossing. And in the rainy season, when those big animals are moving around, they'll move across the roads. Now, the speed limits down there, even on the highways, are usually like 20 or 25 miles an hour. That's because the roads are in such bad shape.
Yeah.
And in every place, there is a place for, they have buses that run around different places, but they have these, like these enormous speed bumps. I mean, you have to slow down to get up, you go across and you go down the other side. And then approaching those big things, they have normal, but they'll have a whole row of them, so there's just a more like you go across.
Good shots needed.
But they're everywhere, and so don't want to drive very fast down there because you're going to get your teeth jarred loose when you hit one of those things. But it's between Bob and the work that he's done individually, the work he's done with the village leaders and throughout the villages, the wells, the training of young adults, the Bible schools, the agribusiness, the school, the Bible college. When you put all these things together, you're talking about a massive amount of work that's taken a lot of years to do that. And it does cost money to do those things. He's dependent on churches throughout different parts. Mostly it's the southeast part of the country from Texas going to the east. It's like anything else. There are churches that'll support him for a while and then they drop him. And it's a continuous process of trying to find support for the work that he does. Personally, what I see he's doing is he's doing work the way I think missionaries should do work. He is raising up the local people to be able to take the word of Christ into those villages. Their own people are the ones who are taking this word back to him. He supports them. We all need support in ministry. You don't even need to say that. There isn't a person in ministry that doesn't need support in some kind of both accountability and someone you can go to when, I mean, there's always a crisis in life. Doesn't matter if you're in ministry or not. Who do you go to? That was always the thing. Ministers, there's a guy who used to be up in Colorado that he was a psychologist for pastors. People would come to see him for, when I was up there, it was for 5 days. When I was on sabbatical, the church I was at said, this is where you're going for 5 days.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird, I've never been to a psychologist, and I never spent 5 days with a psychologist, so it was
A new experience.
felt a little weird, but everybody needs that support and that structure behind them. But at the same time, that's what he provides for these people that he raises up into ministry. He is the support structure for them, just as others are support structures for him. And so he started a very good network down there as far as, and they've reached a long ways. They've also done medical missions, it wasn't Doctors Without Borders, but I can't remember the name of the organization, but they took doctors and dentists down, but that was into northeast Guatemala, because they don't have the wells as a reason to go into the villages there. But most of these villages have that with no medical facilities. There's nothing. If Punta Gorda, which is on the coast, if they needed to doctor bad enough, however, walk, horse, donkey, however they needed to, they would have to go all the way over to Punta Gorda. And you see people that do that. They walk. They walk everywhere. But it's such a normal way of life to say, well, we
They don't know
walked that
any
far, and
better.
it's like, what do you mean we walked that far? That's just like saying, do you breathe? Yeah, I breathe. You know, that's just, it's a normal part of life and the way they do things. So it's, so going into Guatemala now, and Hope Springs Water, who is one of the partners, they're buying a drilling rig up there. They'll be putting in new wells. So between Belize and Guatemala, there's probably easily at least 100, maybe 200 wells planned. And then they just bought a drilling rig in Nicaragua, and along the Coco River Basin at the north of Nicaragua, they could be putting in 150 wells there. So it's very long-term processes, but the simple thing about water that we take for granted is it's not that simple. It isn't. When I was in Africa, the people would walk 2 to 3 hours with 5-gallon plastic buckets to a well where they could get water. You ever tried like a 5-gallon bucket of paint, carry that, how far you can carry? Here you see like 10, 12-year-old kids carrying a 5-gallon bucket of water, and they don't think anything of it.
There's one with a 3-gallon jug on her head, and she's carrying a little girl and 3 gallons of
Right.
water on her head and a little baby.
That's a picture right there.
You'll see
She's
that
only
a lot.
11 years old.
Yeah, there.
And it's, to watch her, we watched her before we took the picture, and she saw us watching her. So the first thing she did is she set the little boy down. Still had the thing in her head. Set the little boy down. Took that off her head and set it down. So we were able to talk to her, and she just was like, you know, this is just normal life. And then she picked the thing back up, put it on her head, reached down, picked the baby, and off she walked down the street.
Here she is going.
It was just, it was astonishing.
Did you see the picture in there of the water, the dark water?
Yeah.
Huh?
Verna took it.
Oh, she thought, but the water is so rusty looking, and when we went down there, we did the first
Well,
well.
there's one.
Oh, that's how bad, and that's what they drank. They drank that rusty water. We had to fill up, we told the villagers that the well would be shut down for the night because we had to let it sit and get better. But anyway, we pumped out that rusty water into their buckets and helped them carry extra buckets, paint buckets full of water back to their houses so that they would have water for the whole night. And then the next morning when they came back, they were looking for the clear water. The clear water that we got out of it, because we were, like I say, the first one there, we had a government official that was there that was checking and testing out. When he tested the water that came out of that well, it was purer than the water that we had in our water bottles that, you know, we brought from, or you buy from a store. It was better than that. And at that time, he signed the document that was given by the government. He signed it and handed it to the guy that's partnering with Bob, with the water company, giving him authorization. And I think at the time they had 460 wells, possibly, and right now they've approved of 160 of these. But it's great for Bob and Rhonda, because now they can take their ministry into these villages, and because of the well brings the
When you think about, when we were there, they say in these villages, Helico that we were in, they said that with dysentery and everything else, it affects up to 90% of the children. And that's just the way of life. That's just what it is. After the wells, the year after we did the wells in that village, they said that rate was less than 5%.
You're kidding.
No, so the water was causing
Cleaning
all the
the
problems.
contamination, and teaching them hygiene, keeping the animals out of their houses, keeping the animals away from the wells, basic cleanliness of washing their hands, washing their cooking utensils in the pots and pans and things that they use. It seems like a very basic thing, but for people like that who have never, it's the basic things that if no one has ever taught anyone through those generations, how would they know that type of thing?
Someone knows it.
How would they possibly, how could they know?
Yeah.
They don't have any way of knowing. When we were in Uganda, we were painting in a clinic, and a young kid comes up and he said, "If you'll give me something to eat, I'll help you work." And this kid was about this big around. So obviously, we had peanut butter sandwiches, apples, and bottled water. So we gave him as many peanut butter sandwiches as he could eat. And they gave him a paint roller. And he's holding this paint roller, like just looking at this with the most perplexed look on his face. He had no idea what it was.
No.
Not a clue. Didn't know how to use it, didn't know what it was for, didn't even know why we gave it to him. So once we taught him how to do it, I mean, he had paint on his teeth. He was grinning and paint splattering, and he's paint. Well, the next day, he showed up with two other kids. One we found was his younger brother, and the other was a friend. And he's down at the corner of the building, and he's teaching them how to use a paint roller. Now, we did not think that teaching something that simple at that level, but in that place, with the unemployment in the capital city of Uganda is about 50%. So teach 2 or 3 young kids a skill, but I mean, but it's so simple. You know, we think everybody knows how to do that. No, they don't. Everybody knows how to wash their hands. No, they don't. Everybody knows how to clean their cooking material. No, they don't. It's not something that's done. And it's worldwide. They say in the water crisis right now that one child dies every 21 seconds in the world because of water-related diseases. That's 171 kids that now were. That's right now, today, in the world. It's like, this is impossible. That's got to be something from 200 years ago. No, it's right now. It's bad water. It says the primary case of disease, poverty, and hunger through most of the developing nations of the world. So water associated with a Christian message that we're taking and the raising up of people within those local locations to be Christian messengers, those are huge things that we do. And although they may be simple, they're essential. It's so needed that it's just beyond belief. You sit there and you're surrounded by these little kids, and keep in mind that statistic that in 21 seconds one of them could die. I had a woman probably in her 80s in Uganda that asked, she said, "Why are you here?" You know, your first thought, isn't it kind of obvious why we're here? But no, she said, but why are you here? And the best thing I could come up with, I said, because Jesus Christ sent us. He loves you. He wants you to know him. She was completely happy with that answer. And I thought, I guess I'm completely happy with that answer also. And she was dying of AIDS. That in Uganda, the elders in the church are in their early 20s because those are the oldest people that are still alive. It's just had one young guy, he's probably about 19. He came up to me and he goes, "You're old." They're not used to seeing old people because most of them have died.
But we don't have that problem in Belize, believe me. In Belize, there's a lot of older people around. In fact, you go into the churches. In fact, one of the churches we went into reminds me of our church with the older people that were there. Only with their church, with the one that we went into, it was separated. The men sat on one side and the women sat on the other. But after the service was over, there was no problem. It's just that during the service, they had to be separated.
And that's not all, that's probably half the churches still hold to that old custom that in those situations men and women are separated. Several of the churches in one or two, that's not the case. It was all mixed together. But most of them have their children with them, because most of them don't have Sunday school programs. So that was a new thing for us when we were taken by surprise when they asked us to do a Sunday school program for for a new church, because they didn't know how to do one. And we had more adults, we probably had more than twice as many adults there as we did kids, because the adults wanted to know how to do it. So it was
And most of the
it's a very, I would have to say that when people go down there for short-term trips, I personally think the effect on them is greater than the effect on the people we go to minister to. They see things from a very different perspective after that.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing need. I can't see in the foreseeable future that need's going to stop. I don't think that we will achieve a complete introduction to Christ to all those villages quickly. I wish it was quickly, but I think I think it'll be exponential. I think once there's enough of those trained young people throughout some of these villages, that they'll be training young people, and as they continue that process of being trained and then training, that it will spread more to the other villages quicker. Right now, it seems like a slow process, and you'd like to I want to go to 18 villages this week. Well, that's not realistic, you can't do that. But you'd like it to be faster, but it's not something that can be faster. But it's very enjoyable, fulfilling work. It's hard work, but it's still, I mean, you see a picture like this, little kids, they don't want you to leave. I mean, you've been there for 4 hours, and right away they're clinging to you. I was on my way to the airport from Africa, and I had 3 of them holding on. They didn't want me to go. And that breaks your heart. You want to stay. You want to be able to do what you can, but it's not realistic that you could do that, obviously. But I've been yammering on a lot. Anybody have any questions?
I just wondered if most of the teachers men or women? Do you get? Oh, you get. I thought maybe
we
the
encourage
women.
strong younger people because work on the wells is hard work.
Sure.
I had 2 women the last trip who wanted to help work on the wells. They were both Metro police officers from Las Vegas. I'm like, I don't have a gender bias that says you can't do that.
Yeah.
But they also had 5 women who, one did vacation Bible school teaching, and one was an elementary teacher. So they ran that part for me because I have hearing damage. I have a hard time understanding children's high-pitched voices. That's difficult for me. So I make sure that I have people who can run the vacation Bible school part of things. But there's, like I said, it's not just men or just women.
Well, I just thought because of the culture, maybe the women were, you stay home or whatever. But it's not.
No, it's
Everybody's welcome.
there is a lot of work to be done, and then part of when we're in the village working on the well, some of the people go from house to house, teaching them the basic hygiene. They have materials that they take as they can show them different things. And they're very open to let us going in. It doesn't shock me anymore to go into the houses with dirt floors and no doors. And at first it did. It was like, this is a living like this.
Don't touch anything.
But they have, it's like a woven grasses and vines from that. They put down mats at different places in the house. But it just seems really strange. Growing up as a little kid, I was a Cowboys and Indians fan. I always thought that's the way the Indians lived, but that was back then. You wouldn't think that anybody lives like that anymore. But there's a lot of places in the world where that's what they have.
Yeah, well, like in early Kansas and Oklahoma, soddy houses.
We went into one place where there was a nurse at a clinic had her own room. To say this room was probably maybe about this square. And it was dirt floor, There was a mat on the floor. That's where she slept. Hanging on the wall was a second nurse's dress. She had one on, there was a second one there. And in the corner, there was this little, like, fire pit. That's where she cooked her food. That was her entire furnishing. That's all she had.
Let me ask you a quick question. What do they do for like toilet facilities? Are they using pits or just wherever they happen to be, or?
They had outside toilets, especially at the schools. In fact, the one school that we were at, the school was right here and the well was here that we were working on, and the outhouses were up on a slight hill up there. So during the rainy season, you go up there,
Yeah.
all the crud is coming down, and where's it washing into? Right into the wells. So that, Mike was talking about the hygiene for that was part of the teaching that we did there. Hey, those things have to move. You have to, you can have them high, but don't have them where the water is rushing down onto to where your wells are.
But those are things that that's an educational process that Bob works through with the staff leaders from Hope Springs Water, of teaching the government officials.
How to do that.
These things have to change in these villages. But they've seen such dramatic results with the increase in healthy children, clean water, schools going up, now a college, that the officials are more open to doing what they're asked to do. But the school, we were doing it well at the school, so obviously elementary school, when you're working right on the grounds, there's kids everywhere. So what we did is when we pulled the pipes, we made this circle around where we're working to tell the kids that's how far you could come. So we could work. Next thing you know, here they come. And they're pushing it with their feet. So all of a sudden the circle's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Move them all back, move the pipes back. So then the pipes started disappearing.
Uh-oh.
And we're like, what the heck? Where are the pipes going? So we finally saw two kids carrying them on their shoulders, and we followed them. They have a soccer field with no goals. And so the teacher's helping them put up the posts so that they can have a goal post. And then we found that time that they only had one soccer ball that was partially inflated. So the next time we went back, we took 24 soccer balls with us. But there's always some little thing that you see that's like, well, we could take care of that. Well, we could get that. We can take that with us next time. We can do these things or those. It's a never-ending process. It's in the support, financial support, the prayer support, the short-term mission support for people to actually go and be a part of things. That is never-ending. We always need that kind of help.
If you notice on the back of the newsletters, there's information you can go on, and like I say, we're not here to collect money or anything like that. We're just letting you know what's going on, and it's up to you if you want to do something to help out down there. So we had some at the early meeting that really want to participate in a mission trip down there. That we can't set one up now because it's too late in the season to plan it. They're already planned, but they're looking forward already to next year at this time to plan to go on the trip. We had 3 of them this morning that want to go next year. So I mean,
They must be younger.
the one couple is I would say they're probably 67, 66, but they're just going to they will be retiring next September, and that's what they're planning, because that they would be able to go if we went like in January.
We had one trip we called the old guy trip.
Yeah.
The youngest guy there, the baby of the family, was 57.
And these guys went down there and actually, rejuvenated the wells.
Ron was going to go, he couldn't go that year, but
Yeah.
that was when we first got together as a group, we were thinking, are we kind of biting off too big of a bite here? But it was, everything worked out really well. We had one well where we had problems. The casing pipe was so rusted that, if we put wrenches on it and try to separate the section, the whole pipe would just twist. And all we had was an old hacksaw and a cold chisel. here we were trying to cut all the way around these pipes to get them to break apart so that we could get the sections out. And that same one has where the casings were like this, but the pump rod inside were they were in the middle, like, so everything was cockeyed. We put this one up, put that one up, and back and forth. It probably took us a whole day just to take the old pipe out and that one well. It was, that was really a lot of work.
But just remember, it's not all about the wells, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
That you could take a team of 10 people down there, and maybe 4 or 5 will be working on the well, and the other 5 or 6 will be doing something else. There's so much that can be done on a trip. It doesn't have to be, and it doesn't matter whether you mentioned about how old they are. It doesn't matter if they're older people, because like we said, we had one group that was really old guys that were doing the work. You can have young people there. It doesn't matter, whether male or female. It's open to anybody as far as the trips. The thing that I was really looking for when presenting all this is to make you guys aware of the trips if we ever do one from here, which Pastor is really, he really likes the idea, but that's beside the point. The other two things is that you can see where if you want to give financially to help him out, because believe me, everything that he gets, as Mike just explained to you, look what he's doing, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But what I like to do, one more thing, but what I like to do for here, I want to try to get people on a prayer list that would commit to praying for Bob's ministry at least once a week. Where we have a list of names where I can come up to you and say, well, have you thought about Bob this week? You can say yes. And that's what I'm looking for from the church. And Pastor, he's the one that brought that suggestion up to me, because we have a prayer list for everybody, but we don't want to, but we can put Bob and Rhonda on there, but I would just like to have a prayer list where 15 or 20 of us are every week are praying for the whole ministry down there. So,
That's another thing that we don't just do all that work ourselves. The people who Bob is apprenticing and who he's raising up in ministry, they go with us when we're doing those things. There are women there on the training center who help do different things. Last time, our first day, the woman who was doing the cooking at the training center, I see her picking up plates, and I thought, this doesn't seem right. I didn't go down there to have someone from Belize serve me. So I told the people, I says, come on, it's time to do the dishes. We start grabbing dishes, and out in the kitchen we went. She was just stunned. She didn't know what to do. She's like, what are you doing? I told her, I says, you're the supervisor and the boss. You tell us what to do, where things go, how you want things put back away. And she's kind of big-eyed. She said, well, this goes there, and they go do it. So finally, after about 3 days, she was a little more comfortable with just being there as an overseer and let us do the work. But there are little things like that when you work with people, that they accept you on a different level. You fit in better because you're not somebody who expects them to cater to whatever your needs are. I always take a small pocket knife with me, and I had an old pocket knife. It was stainless, but it had white plastic, or kind of a cream-colored plastic handle, and it wasn't. I'd had it for quite a while. But I saw the one apprentice guy, and he kept watching that knife, and I'd lay it down, and he's looking. I put it in my pocket. He's fine. It's like he was fixated with this pocket knife. So when I left, I gave it to him, and he's just, his mouth just hanging open. He was stunned. What was it for me? A little knife that I could probably buy for $10. It's not a big deal.
Time to go.
But it connects you to people differently. And so when I went back, he got the knife. I still have it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're turning out the lights on it, Mike.
Oh,
Well, that's very informative. Thank you very much.
And Ron is here.